Hey, and welcome into my channel. My name is Chad, and I talk about Chiefs news and other NFL news. Today, we're going to get into trade scenarios with L'Jarius Sneed, who his suitors are, and what the Chiefs can actually get with him. And I also have a trade idea that I think the Chiefs should actually pull off with whoever they decide to trade L'Jarius Sneed to. But first, before we get started, don't forget to give a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel. It greatly helps out and helps me reach more Chiefs fans just like yourself. So let's get into who is actually interested in trading for L'Jarius Sneed. And I have it broken down between about 7 different teams, which would be the Falcons, the Vikings, the Titans, the Seahawks, the Texans, the Colts, and the Patriots. Most of these teams either are losing some guys in free agency or were kind of near the bottom of the barrel when it came to pass defense in the NFL. Each of these teams also have plenty of cap space, which is one reason why they're chosen for this, not only just for the need for a solid corner like L'Jarius Sneed, who's a top 5 corner in the NFL, in my opinion, that is very versatile, can line up man-to-man against their best corner or receiver and take him completely out of the game, can line up in the slot, can rush the passer, etc. But they also have good draft capital and picks that I personally am interested in for this trade scenario that we're about to get into that I have planned out. So let's get into what Snead's actual value is, which is what most people think is about either a late first-round pick or a second-round pick, or maybe a group of a second and a fifth or a third and a fourth, something in that general vicinity. But what I have planned is the Chiefs not only trading Snead to a team, but they also give their own 32nd pick to the team that they're trading to and swapping those first round picks, which that first round pick that they're swapping for will be either a top third to top half pick, and then also get another pick on top of it, like a third or a fourth, somewhere in that vicinity. So the first team that I think the Chiefs have a really good chance of actually trading Snead to would be the Minnesota Vikings. I think Snead would actually fit really well with the Vikings. The Vikings run a fairly similar defense like the Chiefs do. They're very aggressive. They rush the passer, send multiple guys, a lot like how the SPAG system works. And Snead would fit in perfectly right away in that Minnesota defense. And what the Chiefs would get from this is they would swap the first round picks with the Vikings, which is going to be the theme of this. So the Chiefs would get the 11th pick, their 4th round pick, and then also the Vikings 6th round pick. And the Vikings obviously would get the Chiefs first round pick, which is the 32nd pick. And then they would also get L'Jarius Sneed. Not only is this a good fit schematically for the Vikings, who run a really similar system to what the Chiefs defense runs, where they're very blitz happy, they send a lot of guys, and you have to really rely on those corners to lock up whoever they're going against. But the Vikings are also a quarterback needy team, considering that Kirk Cousins has now left them to go to the Falcons. And that 32nd pick that they'll be getting from the Chiefs also in this trade with that flip, they'll be in position to possibly get one of those guys at the end of the first round as a like J.J. McCarthy, a Bo Nix, a Michael Penix Jr. And because they're not going to be in the running for one of those top 3 guys, they're going to go probably 1, 2, and 3 in the draft. So you'll have an option to still grab one of those quarterbacks at the end of the first round, or at least be in position to even trade up a little bit to secure one of those guys. And you still get that 5th-year option from the first round pick if you were to select a quarterback there. The next team that I think would be interested in trading for L'Jarius Sneed would actually be the Atlanta Falcons. And how that trade would work is it would still be the exact same type of trade scenario where you're flipping that first round pick. So the Chiefs would get the 8th pick in the draft in the first round. They'd also get a 3rd round pick where the Falcons would get the 32nd pick in the first round and L'Jarius Sneed on top of it. So as I mentioned earlier, the Falcons did sign Kirk Cousins. They're signing him to a 4-year deal, but they're also losing Jeff Okudah, who's signing with the Texans, and Trey Flowers is still a free agent. We're not sure where he's going to be yet. He may resign, but L'Jarius Sneed would be obviously a good fit anywhere, but that's a big need still for the Falcons right now. Plus, the Falcons still have the cap space. Right now, they're at $41 million. I'm not sure if that's going to count with Kirk Cousins. I'm sure Kirk Cousins got a decent signing bonus, so they'll have the cap space to re-sign L'Jarius Sneed once they trade for him. And I think this is still a really good trade. I think the Falcons are in a really good position to actually win their division and do something in the playoffs. And they have a defense that Kirk Cousins really hasn't had for his entire career, especially with the Minnesota Vikings. So I think this gives Kirk Cousins a good chance at actually doing something in the playoffs. And then also, obviously, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the 8th pick is a little pricey, I would say, if I'm the Falcons. So if I am doing that flop. Maybe a fourth round pick is better than a third round pick, but I still think that it's worth doing. You don't really have any serious needs outside of corner, and you might as well just trade for a guy that you know is going to come in right away and do his job. So another team that's kind of in a win now mode or potentially can get to the playoffs, at least as a wild card seed, would be the Seattle Seahawks. They're also a team that you could see utilizing that 32nd pick to actually grab one of those quarterbacks. Also, I know they have Geno Smith, but they could take a Michael Penix Jr. and sit him behind Geno Smith for a year. And if you think he's ready by the time in 2025, then get rid of Geno Smith and you've got Michael Penix in there with you, and he's got that 5th-year option. I think this is a fairly realistic trade. Pick 16 isn't something like that. Pick 8, and you'd be okay with giving up a third-round pick. So the Chiefs would be going up significantly, half the way up the draft to get themselves into a better position, and then they also would acquire a third-round pick on top of it. And the Seahawks, like I said, still get that 32nd pick if they want to grab a corner or a quarterback. And then they also get one of the best corners in football. And the Seahawks would be adding some veteran leadership, which they cut both Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. So that's something that would be a real plus. I know they've got some good talent with Tariq Woolen, but adding L'Jarius Sneed there also to take some of that pressure off of Tariq Woolen would help him quite a bit, and it would instantly make their defense much better. They also have the cap room to re-sign L'Jarius Sneed once they do trade for him. They've got just under $50 million. I think $46.8 million is what they've got. And L'Jarius Sneed is a very versatile guy. You can put him in the slot, you can put him outside. If you had to put him at safety, I'm sure he could do that as well. So it's a good fit for the Seahawks. I think it's worth trading for. You're not giving up a ton, and you still have the draft capital to possibly get a quarterback if they feel the need to do so at the late end of the first round. The next team that I got would be the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I think these next two teams, it would be a little less likely because you're still trading within the AFC. And I think if the Chiefs were realistic, I think they would like to get L'Jarius Sneed outside of the AFC and into the NFC where they don't have to play him very often, where if you were to trade him to the Colts or the next team, then you would probably see him more often than you would like. The Colts situation is exactly the same as the Seahawks. They are back-to-back picks. The Chiefs would get the 15th pick and then also their third-round pick. The Colts, like I said, would swap the first-round pick, so they get the 32nd pick at the end of the first round and L'Jarius Sneed on top of it. The Colts are losing Kenny Moore to free agency. He could possibly re-sign. They have the cap space to do whatever they want, but they have signed a bunch of guys right now, or at least re-signed a bunch of guys along their defensive line. So the cap space is starting to dwindle, and I would much rather have one of the best corners in football at L'Jarius Sneed, which will instantly make your defense much better. The Colts' pass defense was a middle-of-the-pack pass defense last year, and I think if you were to add L'Jarius Sneed, it would bolster that back into the defense tremendously, especially when you're in a division that has CJ Stroud, who had such an outstanding rookie season that actually made the playoffs and won a playoff game. And then you also have Trevor Lawrence, who had a bit of a down year with injuries and stuff, but also clearly has the same potential to make it to the playoffs and win some playoff games and compete for the division. So L'Jarius Sneed would instantly come in and help improve your odds against those better quarterbacks and improve your defense instantly. The last team I have on this list is going to stay in the same division, which will be the Tennessee Titans. I think this is one of the ones that are the least likely to happen just because that pick is so high and they have so many different needs. But corner is one of those big needs, and Sneed is one of those big names that would instantly come in that packed division with quarterbacks and help them out right away. So the Titans, not only would they get Sneed, but they would flip the first round picks. They'd get that 32nd pick in the draft, and they could be a team that's a quarterback needy team scenario, kind of like how the Vikings and the Seahawks would be to possibly draft a quarterback to compete with Will Levis. But I'm kind of on the doubtful side of that one. I think they may try with Will Levis at least for another year, and if it doesn't work out, draft a quarterback early the following draft. But the Chiefs would get the 7th pick, and they would get a 4th round pick and a 6th round pick. I think it would be most likely just getting a 4th round pick. That 6th round pick would be kind of an extra thing if the Chiefs can kind of slide it in there. But I think it's a plausible trade, but I think it's one of the more least likely trades out of all the ones that I've discussed already. And another team that could be obviously mentioned would be the Patriots. They're not going to do, in my opinion, a flip pick for the 32nd of the third. I think that third pick is a little too pricey, obviously, but they're also so quarterback needy. I think they'll draft a quarterback with that third pick. So it'll most likely just be a second round pick that they would get from the Patriots if the Chiefs were to trade Snead to them, which would be perfectly fine. But in this scenario, we're doing the first round flip, which is something that I would prefer to do. But a second round pick for Snead, and then possibly another pick on top of that would be perfectly fine for the Patriots, who also are in need for a shutdown corner, kind of like L'Jarius Sneed is. So what do you think about the trade idea? Do you like the idea of flipping a first round pick with Snead and also gaining another pick on top of that? Do you want to trade Snead just straight up for maybe a second round pick or a low first round pick? Is there another team that I didn't mention that you think that might be interested in L'Jarius Sneed? Or which team do you think Snead would actually get traded to? What scenario do you think actually makes the most sense, and which one was most likely to happen? And as always, thank you so much for stopping in and giving me a watch and a listen. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and go Chiefs.